Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I'm planting my onion seeds. I'm inside in my grow room. It's the end of January, and this is a great time to get onions started indoors when you live in a cold climate like myself. I'm here in Saskatchewan, Canada. We have, I don't know, this much snow on my garden beds right now, a few feet, and I want to get my onions started because the longer you grow your onions, the larger the onion bulb will be if you give it ideal growing conditions. So I like to start them inside in January, just in a tray, so thickly in rows. I have 4 types of seeds to grow, and I'll get them planted out today. And then as soon as the garden beds are thawed out, the soil's workable, around 10 degrees Celsius, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I can set those starts out. Even if we're still getting frosts, the onion sets can easily go outside at that point. They won't be harmed by light frosts, and they just get a little jump start on the season. So get them started early indoors, and you can have them out early in the spring. You can direct sow your seeds, and again, just as soon as the soil is workable basically, then you could sow your seeds down nice and thick outside, and they'll come up for you, and they might not get quite as long of a growing season, and you might be harvesting them more at the end of the season, whereas I'll be able to harvest mine as pretty good sized bulbs, even starting in the middle of the summer, right up to the end of summer. So all I do is I have a tray here. Now you can use any type of tray. You could use seed cells, whatever you want, because we're going to sow them pretty thick, but I like to just put them in a big tray, put them all together. This is just a tray from, I don't know, a salad or greens or something from the store, and I've popped some holes in the bottom. And I've actually just put a little bit of potting soil in the bottom, and it's barely damp, but I'm not worried about that right now because this bottom part isn't going to be touched by the roots for a little while. But this will have a little bit of fertilizer and nutrients in it, so when the roots do get down to it, then they're ready to have that fertilizer, and they'll take off from there. What I'll put on the top is just some peat moss that I've moistened, and this is a grower's mix of peat moss that I purchased. It's a little wetter than I need. It was pretty dry in the bag that I took it out of, so I had really moistened it up to get it nice and damp. But this grower's mix just means that the manufacturer's taken the time to add a little bit of vermiculite and some lime to it, just because peat moss can be quite acidic, and so they've made it to the kind of optimum pH for starting seeds. So I just want to put a nice little layer of this on here. And seeds don't need any nutrients. They don't need fertilizer to get started. They have everything they need right in them. And the peat moss mix, a little cheaper than potting soil, and especially because I buy it in big bales. And it's nice and loose, holds the moisture well, but also drains well, so it helps to get the seedlings off to a good start. That's what I find works the best for starting my seedlings, so that's what I like to use. I'm just scooping it out here to make a nice layer. You could use seed starting mix if you prefer to use that. I just start a lot of seeds, and so I just like to purchase the bales of the grower's mix peat moss, and that's just what works best for me. So there, I've made a nice fairly even layer of the peat moss on here, and this dish is fairly deep, and that's because I want to be able to grow these onions in here for several months, and they're going to have a lot of roots, so I want to have quite a bit of space for that to happen, to have those roots grow. I need to mark my tags, and while I do that, I'll tell you about the varieties that I have here. So I have a couple of older seed packs here. These are from last year. And the first one is Valencia. So this is a 110 to 120 day variety of onion. It's a Spanish onion. It's supposed to be sweet but mild flavored. And I grew some of these last year, and I thought they were a pretty nice onion, and so far they seem to be storing pretty nice. They're yellow skin and a little bit of like a yellow onion on them. And then we have the Ailsa Craig, if there's any left. I might just skip these. Yeah, I only have like 3 seeds and they didn't grow as nice for me here. I'm wondering if they're just not quite as happy in my climate here. This is one I had seen I wanted to try. I see a lot of people over in the UK grow them. I don't know that they're as popular here. They are heritage variety. I only have 3 seeds, so I might just direct sow those later on. And then I have Superstar. This has always been my favorite. It's just a nice mild white onion. It's very sweet. I've been told that the sweet onions don't store well, but I don't have a lot of trouble with storing them. Usually they'll last pretty good for me. And this is a 100-day. So, and I'm not sure. I think, yeah, I used this seed last year. So onion seed doesn't always store well and work from year to year as well. But usually the second year you can get a pretty decent germination rate. After that, it can really, I find, kind of drop off. The next one is just a Spanish onion. It's a candy hybrid. Another one I've used before, grown before, and I've found it to be a nice onion. If I recall, it's a yellow onion, but it's an 85-day onion. And since I only have about 110 frost-free days in my area, anything that grows in 85 days here is a pretty nice thing to have planted. Like I said, we will plant these out a little earlier than the frost, and we're starting them indoors months in advance. But the longer you can grow onions, the bigger they get. So we want to have as many days to grow them as possible. So then all I do once I have the tags in, make sure I plant them in the right order. So I just do a little furrow, just a thin, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 centimeter or so, and it doesn't really need to be exact. Just make a little line for them. Now I don't need a ton of onions, so you might want bigger containers or more rows, but I'm just going to do 1 row of each. This will still give me a lot of onions. That's an onion seed if you've never seen one. They're just a really dark little, almost like a tiny little rock. And then I don't really worry about spacing too much. I'm just going to drop them, try and get them down in that little furrow. And some of them will be right touching beside each other. Some of them will be a little more spread out. But I sow them pretty thick because they're just going to be growing in here for these few months, getting good strong roots going, getting established, and then I will just separate them out and plant them out like starts into my garden later on once the snow is melted. So what's the next one? Superstar. So you can do 1 little trench here. So the exact same thing, I'm just kind of sprinkling them into this little trench quite thickly. And then I just have the Spanish candy hybrid. Now this says it has 150 seeds in it, so probably plant about 1/2 of that. Get a pretty good amount of them, and I'm just going to sprinkle them in just like the rest. Okay, so now that I have all the seeds in, I'm just going to give them a little push with the soil. Get some contact, a little bit of soil over the seeds. And just cover over the rows a tiny bit. You want them about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep, but it's really not going to be too big of a deal at this point. This is just getting them started. I'm just kind of peeling out some of the peat moss mix here to add on these rows. There. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of vermiculite and I'm going to sprinkle that over top the whole thing. And this will just help to take up some extra moisture on the soil surface, if there is any. And then if the soil surface starts to dry out a little bit, it will help release some. So it just kind of helps with that moisture control. And helping with moisture control will also help with any fungus gnat issues that might want to crop up. If you wind up with fungus gnats in your seed room, you can always get those little sticky traps or some like nematodes, like plant poppers or something to put on the soil. And when you're doing both of those, you'll get the adults with the sticky traps, and the nematodes will get the babies in the soil, and that'll help take care of the fungus gnats quite well. But the best thing is to try and prevent them by not overwatering. And after the seedling stage, I try to do all my watering from the bottom. I find that really helps to keep the top of the surface just a little bit drier and just keep the moisture down at the bottom where the root zone is. So now I'm going to push these tags down as far as I can. I'm going to give this a little spritz. Like I said, that peat moss was fairly moist, so I'm not worried about putting a lot of moisture in here because there is quite a bit in the peat moss already, but moisture is what gets seeds going, so you need some. And then, like I said, I have drain holes in the bottom of this, but I'm not going to be watering this right fully for a while until I have the seeds established. So I'm just going to use this little drip tray to put on top to make a bit of a humidity dome, to help hold the humidity in there, help hold the moisture in there, and get these seeds started. Now, in my experience, onions will usually sprout within about 4 days. Sometimes they can take a week to 10 days to get them all up, but you should start to see some action in about 4 days usually. I'm going to put these on my grow shelf with my lights on, just because my lights are on and there with plants growing already. If you don't have a spot with lights, that's fine, but keep in mind, these will sprout very quickly, and once they've sprouted, you will need some light. So really bright window or grow lights, somewhere where they're going to get that good lighting to help them grow nice and strong. And then you just want to keep an eye on them. They don't need to be waterlogged, but they are going to need to be watered regularly, especially once when you sow them this thick, the roots are going to get pretty thick in there. And so they might, in a month or so, start to need watering almost every day. It's okay to let them dry out a little bit, but you don't want to let them dry out for more than a day. Onions are heavy feeders, so once they get going, you want to make sure you're giving them a little bit of a fertilizer. Like I said, I have a potting soil in here that has some fertilizer in it, so the roots are going to hit that and they'll enjoy that. I'll also probably be giving them just a week, kind of half strength fertilizer as I do the rest of my seedlings, just go through all of them. And then you want to make sure they're getting well fertilized when you plant them out as well. I don't think there's much else that you need to know about sowing your onion seeds. If you prefer not to go this method, if you prefer to, not have onions started in the house, you can always buy onion sets, or some areas you can actually buy the onion starts, which is kind of what we're basically making here, is someone else has grown the seeds for you, bundled up little tiny onion plants that you'll plant out. We're just starting the seeds ourselves here, and then we'll have tiny little plants to put out. Or, like I said, just the onion bulbs and just push them into the soil. Sometimes people say the onion bulbs tend to go to flower faster and then they don't store as well. I don't know. It can happen, but I don't find a lot of problem with that here in my climate. It can happen sometimes, but it's a risk you take, and it's that trade-off of having the space and extra time, from not starting things inside to getting the bulbs going and maybe having a few that flower on you and aren't as easy to store. You could still use them though, you just need to use them faster. So you should have some to store still. Thanks for coming along with me. If you like this video, if you like growing onions, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you know someone who is interested in starting a garden or sowing onions this year, maybe share this video with them, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.